instability?
Well, as I said, Benin is a small country in a not very stable region, but it is considered a source of stability. So the other African nations in the region are interested in maintaining that stability. They want more stability in their area so their economies can grow, so they can get tourism, so their countries can prosper and develop. As nations. And so there is a broader interest in the region of maintaining stability in Benin, which is why we saw the Nigerian armed forces come in and make strikes. I mean, obviously that was welcomed by the Benin president, but also the other nations in the region. They do want stability. Why do they want stability? It's so that their nations can prosper and grow and people become richer and healthier. They don't want instability, they don't want uprisings, they don't want more wars. So that is why they swiftly took action so that the coup could not be successful and take root, which would be another source of instability, not just for Benin, but also for its neighbors and the region.
And ECOWAS has been effective, like you've mentioned, and swift in particularly about this crisis. But why is it very slow, or why is it not effective in other regions in Africa?
I'm not an Africa expert, but I do know that when there is a coup attempt, it has to be put down very quickly because the moment it takes hold, you get factions within the government deserting to the other side. So that was very important. As for its role in the Pan African region, I'm afraid I'm not an expert on the region, but what was clear that it did take action yesterday, sorry, and today as well, because there may be still lingering elements from the coup attempt. I heard 14 were arrested, but there are probably other elements as well. And we haven't heard of any casualties at the moment. But this was obviously an important thing for EWAS to do.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Ms. Alison Mutler for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to Nigeria. Nigeria's government says 100 school children have been abducted last month in Niger State have been released now. One of the country's largest mass kidnappings in recent years. The children, along with 12 school staffs, were taken from St. Mary's Catholic Boarding School in Papiri on November 21st. 50 pupils escaped shortly after the attack. However, the whereabouts of the remaining children and staff had been unknown until now. Authorities and the Christian Association of Nigeria say they have not been officially notified of the release. However, the incident highlights ongoing insecurity in Nigeria more than a decade after the Chibok abductions. Now for this discussion, we welcome Major General Sudakarji. He's a retired and international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this again, how dangerous is this reoccurring pattern of mass school kidnappings, particularly in Nigeria? And what security measures should Nigeria make, or the Nigerian government take, so that this is not reoccurring?
Good afternoon, Asoma. Thank you for getting me for your show. A very interesting question you have asked. Two parts. First part, allow me to, in order to respond to the question, let's tell our viewers as to where is Nigeria, what's going on there.
Yes.
And if you have time, if you don't have time, then I can give a very cryptic answer. But the fact of the matter, it has to be understood in the larger perspective. The larger perspective is that Nigeria is a Western nation. It's a West African nation, and it has got largest. It is the seventh largest populous country in the world, and it's got a very high birth rate, and the youth profile is pretty high. But it is going through very trying times of lack of economic development, poverty. Large number of people are below the poverty line. Literacy rate is not picking up. But importantly, people need to understand, firstly, the religion. classification of religion. There are Muslims, approximately 46 to 56%. Christians are around 40 to 46%. Then you have the minorities are in between in the center and elsewhere in the country. And the most important thing one has to understand is that the Islamic religion is predominantly towards the northern part of Nigeria, and Christianity is to the southern part. So, southern part, southeastern portion of Nigeria is witnessing a very terrible insurgency, and the north and the central part of Nigeria is also experiencing a lot of insurgency or terrorism. But one thing has to be understood by our viewers, that Nigeria is hugging the border. You know, there is a corridor called a Corridor. Sahel
Yes.
corridor has got 10 countries in it. Nigeria also figures in the Sahel corridor, which is predominated by the ISIS. And there is a sprinkling, not sprinkling, a good density of Al Qaeda also operating in this. So this abduction and all that we keep reporting, keeps coming in the media, is generally from the central and the northern portion of Nigeria. Now, who are responsible? So, allow me, if you have time, otherwise, I can cut it short. Very quick reflections about the
Yes.
terrorist organizations who are operating here. The first group is towards the northeast is Boko Haram. In
Yes.
short, it is called a JAS. And there are splinter groups of Boko Haram. Basically, they want the Islamic states to be spreading across the complete Nigeria, and they are dominating presently towards the in the entire northern and central portion of West Africa province. In short, it is called as ISWAP. There is a second group which is dominating in the northern and central Nigeria. It's called Ansaru. Basically, they indulge in kidnappings and attacks across these two portions or the regions of the country, and they are jihadists. They all are fighting for extremist Islamic rule against the government. The third one is Islamic State's West Africa Province, ISWP. It's a breakaway faction active since 2016. And basically, they are not looking for controlling territory or resources. They are more strategic on governance than pure violence. And third, the last but one is a Al Qaeda group. It's a Ansaru group, splinter from Boko Haram. They are responsible for kidnapping foreigners and military personnel and active in northern Nigeria. And there is a small little bandit group who are criminal gangs, and they are towards the northwest portion of Nigeria, known for kidnapping people and also holding them to ransom, as also cattle rustling. And likewise, you have herdsmen group, militia group, you have indigenous people, Biafra group, you have established Islamic rule, Boko Haram group, you have separatist groups. Likewise, there are so many of them. Rough count from my side is around 9 to 10, but it could be much more. But what I'm trying to highlight is basically people are not they are not economically, livelihood is not up to the mark of the international standard. A large number of people are below the poverty line. There is hardly any education taking place. They are Muslim, and many of the families, they have more than 5 to 7 children. So this is actually being exploited by the terrorist organizations. That's why you have kidnapping and other things, demanding different things at different time. Mostly, it is for the government's response or demands of booty from the government, which has been actually predominating their demands. Now, this is picking up momentum towards the Muslim dominated areas, central and northern portion of Nigeria. Also, be mindful of the fact that it is a country who produces large quantum of oil and gas. The GDP is not small, it is close to $806 billion. The per capita income, if you actually take, it is also not so low. But
Yes.
however, because of certain portions, lack of development and lack of government attention, And very
Yes.
close to the Sahel region, these kind of terrorist and separatist activities are taking place, who are demanding
Yes.
autonomous status or independence of portion of the of Nigerian country as such. Back to you, please.
Yes. Major General, you have covered it all. Thank you very much for sharing that insight with us. Please stay with us as we stay in the region. Now, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has requested more support from France to tackle rising violence in the country's north. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that France will strengthen its partnership with Nigeria and assist affected populations, particularly against terrorist threats. The request comes amid escalating attacks, including mass kidnappings from schools and churches, and ongoing clashes between herders and farmers. U.S. President Donald Trump has raised the possibility of military action, accusing Nigeria of failing to protect Christians, while the Nigerian government says all faith groups are being targeted. France, which has withdrawn troops from West and Central Africa, is expected to focus on training, intelligence sharing, and responding to Nigeria's requests for help. Nigeria has welcomed foreign support as long as its sovereignty is respected. Now we move on to our next news. Moving the focus to South Africa, South African authorities have withdrawn a 90-day visa exemption for Palestinians following the arrival of a charter flight carrying 153 people, which the government described as a part of a campaign of forced migration. Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Krieber, has said that the flight, along with a similar one in October, was organized by Israeli actors allegedly seeking to relocate Gaza residents. And they have represented an abuse of the visa system as well as the passengers themselves. Authorities have expressed concerns that passengers could be left destitute upon arrival. The flights have sparked alarm among human rights groups who warned that such moves may be part of broader efforts to forcibly empty Gaza. Israel has defended the relocation, stating that the Palestinians left Gaza after approval was obtained from a third country. The controversy comes amid heightened international scrutiny, with critics warning that plans to permanently remove Gazans' more than 2 million residents would constitute as ethnic cleansing. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's an international affairs, relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what could be the implications of South Africa's visa withdrawal for Palestinians, and do you think this was a necessary step by South Africa for making sure they're not taken advantage of, not by the Gazans, not by Israel, not by any group?
Yeah, Suma, very interesting subject, and you have raised a very important point.
Thank you.
I would say there is an issue related at the global level, there is an issue related at the regional, and there is also an issue related to the governance, global governance, rules-based international order. So let me tackle the global level. Global level, we all know that there is an ongoing conflict between the Hamas and Israel, and also a tremendous amount of effort is been undertaken or initiative taken by Donald Trump and his team to bring about normalcy and peace in the region. Also concurrently, and towards that end, there is a peace proposal, 20-point peace proposal, which has been mooted, and initial part has only been gone into the transaction or exchange of prisoners oblique hostages. The last one, I think, it's underway, should be coming any time. So that's a significant achievement, and for which the compliments have to be given. But the bigger issues are the following. Firstly, Hamas have to disarm. Whether they disarm or not, it's $1 million question. And the second phase and third phase, likewise, it will go on. But the central issue which the global order has to decide, that are Palestinians authorized a independent nation or not? This somehow is not been loud and clear in the 20-point peace proposal. If you recall, you and me, both of us have discussed many times in these kind of panel discussions or in the past. They are silent on this. And also in 1997, there was a top secret document or a project which was initiated. It is yet to catch the attention of the people, and it spoke about the name of the project is Clean Break. The Clean Break is essentially the central theme of this project is that Palestinians have no place in the Middle East. If that is what the peace proposal has been based on, then I am afraid I have no comments to give, because it is going against the very understanding and the agreement. Israel was given an agreement in way back in 1948 by none other than the United Nations Security, the General Assembly and the Security Council. And also the Palestinians have been recognized in that. They are supposed to be. And time and again, number of times, including Oslo's agreement in 1993, the Palestinians are to be given a separate piece of land and the status of an independent country. Now, who's going to ask about that? So I am afraid it has not been catered for. And I think Donald Trump, since this report has come that people are being forced to go on migration to South Africa without visa, I am afraid neither it is ethical to undertake such practices, nor is it acceptable by a country like South Africa. And they are right in their own way. As per my assessment, they have withdrawn this 90 days of visa-free kind of movement. And I think they have a sovereign right to do that. However, there are some contrarian kind of views which come up, which shoot up on humanitarian perspective. Where do they go? The question is, where do the Palestinians go? There is no passport office or visa office in Gaza today. How do they carry out the kind of preparation of visas? So therefore, on landing, the visas will be prepared. But South Africa has been taken for a ride. They have not been consulted. It is not the first time. The first batch of some people came in the month of October. Second batch came in November. Now the third batch has come. So likewise, they will keep flooding in the Palestinians to South Africa. Have they been consulted? Has their concurrence been taken? So these kind of things, questions come up, which actually raise a very serious fractures in the system of governance of the global order. Is this on? I don't think so. It should not be practiced. It should not be furthered. But going on to the humanitarian point of view, it has to be looked into at the highest level. Now, who is going to look into this at the highest level? My only plea is that there is a United Nations organization, there is a human rights organization, Human Rights Watch, you have Amnesty International, you have International Court of Justice, you have International Criminal Court. Kindly look into all these aspects and come to a conclusion. Let people not be unnecessarily and unfortunately flown from Gaza and to places like South Africa without any prior information. The country has to prepare to receive them. This is not the way that we have to handle the people who are caught between the humanitarian crisis as also the conflict-ridden situation in the Middle East. This has to stop forthwith, and some practical and wise decision has to be taken on the place, not to displace them, not to vacate the Gaza. These are my personal views. Back to you, please.
100%. Major General, thank you for sharing that insight and educating us on the history behind what is happening right now in the Middle East, particularly with Gazans right now. With that, I would like to thank Major General Sudakarji for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now, moving the focus on to Uganda, Uganda's opposition candidate Bobi Wine has said that he was beaten alongside his aides and his supporters by security forces while campaigning in the north of Uganda in an escalation of violence ahead of the presidential elections on January 15, 2026. Wine, a pop star turned politician whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, is challenging the president Yoweri Museveni for the second time after coming second in the last election in 2021. Meanwhile, Wine has also said that he was hit on his face with a cane, and other supporters were also beaten and had to be hospitalized as they approached a campaign venue in Gulu, the biggest city in Uganda's north. However, a military spokesperson, Chris Magezi, has accused Wine and his supporters of forming an illegal procession and campaigning beyond the prescribed time. And that's a wrap on Africa Brief. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Tech on News6 World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs, trends, and gadgets from around the world. The world is rapidly moving towards a cashless economy where digital payments replace physical cash. Mobile wallets, contactless cards, and digital currencies are driving this shift. Powered by technology, consumer demand, and government policies, traditional banks must adapt while the unbanked risk being left behind. Cashless systems could change how we save, spend, and perceive wealth, reshape global trade, and streamline cross-border payments. Governments face the challenge of balancing convenience, security, and privacy in this digital financial future. To talk about this, joining us now is Dr. Ajay Dua, who is also served as Secretary in the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion at India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry from 2005 to 2007. He's currently a senior business advisor and board member for several multinational corporations. His work examines the world's rapid shift towards a cashless economy where mobile wallets, contactless payments, and digital currencies are reshaping how we spend, save, and move money. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Dua, for joining us again. Good to see you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, my first question is, how would you define a cashless economy and how close are we to achieving it globally?
I would look at it as a very simple definition where you do not settle a transaction by payment of currency notes or coins if they are still there in any part of in some parts of the world. That is what has been deemed hitherto as cash, notes or coins. So when you are not using any of either of these to settle a transaction, a payment, and instead using other means which have evolved, I would consider that as a cashless economy. We have taken a while, if you would recall, to move away from the earliest way of settling buying and selling or acquiring and disposing any transaction, any deal, transaction, or any wealth from the barter system, which prevailed from probably the Stone Age right till the medieval ages, to a currency note-based system, a so-called cash system, only in the last 200 years or so. 200 or 250 years, I'm not absolutely sure when did it really settle in. But to the question, how close is the global economy? I would say we have reached that only partially so far. If you look at the developed countries, the industrialized countries of the world, the progress there in moving to a cashless society has been much more than in the developing world, the emerging countries, which have the largest population, but not the largest wealth or largest income. So there is a very clear divide between development and developing world in terms of reaching the stage of a cashless economy.
Yes, 100%. And Dr. AJ, what are the main drivers pushing these societies towards going cashless? Is it consumer demand, technology, or policy?
Again, I think apart from the fact that there is a clear division, there is a demarcation on where it has taken off, where it hasn't, I would say the need for it and the factor driving it, the maximum, is convenience. Instead of carrying cash in your pockets, cash to be kept in the bank and writing a check, and somebody goes and draws the cash, or the cash moves from one account to the other. Now, the newer ways of payment are the ones which you talked about, starting with plastic money. Those were the credit cards and the debit cards which started some decades ago. We have gone on to bitcoins and digital currency and various digipayments, as we call them in some parts of the world, considerably. And we have been able to do that because of technology. To make it convenient, the governments, I would say not the governments really, the evolution of technology, the rapid evolution of digital technology, all that has helped in getting the move towards cashless society. And whichever parts of the world where the state, the governments have also realized the importance, and they have taken a conscious decision to push it, the movement has been farther, quicker. And I would give an example of India, our country, from where I am speaking, as one large economy, fourth largest, population probably the world's biggest already. There, the move towards cashless society is visible and pretty rapid.
100%, yes, I also noticed that about India, and I feel like it is even ahead of Japan in many ways. Now, how might a cashless economy affect traditional banks and the broader financial system, according to you?
I don't think the impact of it is going to be adverse on the traditional banking system. Yes, there would be different kind of work which the banks are custodians of people's money or the state's money, would be required to discharge, because every digital payment, every cashless payment also has to be backed by a ways and means of settling that transaction. Nobody is selling a good for a free. Nobody is buying it for free. It is, instead of paying instant cash or taking credit and then settling it later, we are doing it by more convenient ways now. Signing credit card, the debit card, or digi payment systems. Those kind of various linked to these, so various variations have also come into the picture. But all these settlements have to be cleared. It is not that you just move away without making a payment, you don't settle it. So how do you settle it? Everything has to go back to a clearing house, saying how much do I have to pay the other person, how much does he have to take, aggregate it. The banks are much more involved in doing it because the money or the assets which back any transaction, any wealth, or any kind of, call it I would say, a system of credit, have to be backed by actual assets. The actual assets would be, we've been keeping them more in banks than any other forms. It could be other financial institutions, not necessarily controlled by government, or might be controlled if they are, smaller non-banking financial companies, as we call them in India. Those have only now, or in recent years, only been brought under the purview of the federal bank, the central bank, as we call it. But somebody has to discharge the functions. I'm repeating myself probably, but they do not become irrelevant, the banks nor the other financial institutions which are evolving somewhere, others places they have evolved and are going into newer financial activities.
Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. AJ, now could going cashless widen or narrow this gap between rich and poor? And what about those who are unbanked or technologically excluded?
I considered it a very relevant question, what you were asking me. My compliments for that. I think the basic requirement for moving from cash to the other forms which we've just been talking about, first it requires literacy. Only literate people, basic literacy who can move from cash to these forms. Reason, not that the cash doesn't have to be counted. When they make a payment, they do know this is a 100-rupee note, this is a $10 note, this is a €5 note. So all those things they are able to read, keep it in mind, add and subtract while making transaction. But that's not going to be enough when we move to these various modes of cashless economies. There, they have to be able to handle fair amount of information, the feedback which they would get about the transactions they've done, who's settling them, at what rates of exchange are these settled. So all those things, you can delegate the work, or passwords, has one-time passwords, OTPs, many of these digital transactions require that, does require a fair amount of being alert, as well as literate, as well as agile, because they give you a fair short period of time to respond. If you do not respond to a password demand or any other identification means, then that transaction goes null and void. So literacy, yes, required, and similarly, you raised the word, you had asked me a question about will it be kind of leading to disparities, or will it be closing the gap between the rich and the poor? I think the effect of it might be that it widens it, because the cost of doing cashless transactions probably is once the volumes increase, or you are dealing with large amount of the settlement amounts, there could be economies of scale offered to you by the clearing houses, by the person who gets instant payment rather than in, say, by way of credit through a credit card or some other bill being given. The literate persons, people doing large amount of transactions, probably would benefit much more from it than those who are dealing with small amounts and are not able to do it very well and do not have a so-called credit rating from the financial institutions on how much they can transact in, because that will depend upon their how they were able to settle, etc. That's the commonality between banking and this. But my gut feeling is that it would, the haves, the people who are already better off, they would stand to gain from it much more.
That is so enlightening. Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, Dr. AJ, could a cashless economy change how we save, invest, or even perceive wealth?
At the end of the day, my answer to that is going to be a little ambivalent, for the simple reason that neither cash nor the other ways of settling it, what we've been discussing, actually are going to make a difference in the way the wealth is kept, invested, or kind of distributed. Because that depends upon all those attitudes or all those accumulations of wealth, etc., which have come from whichever means, businesses or inheritances, etc. Those would continue. The settling them in a cashless manner is just replacing or expediting how you settle your obligations or gifts or whatever you are indulging in, or you are indulging in with cash. It is not going to make too much of a difference, except if it is very convenient. Maybe people think that instead of filling forms to invest money, now you can do it with a click of a button, and the other side responds, gives you a confirmation, etc. It might make investment easier. And if that happens on a wider scale, I would say a boost. It would be a boost for investment. It may be a financial investment, it may be a physical investment in real estate, buying bullion, or any other kind of investment, and business investment, etc. It would probably facilitate that, and that could give a boost rather than to saving. People fear that if savings are high, say in a particular economy or society, because that's their traditional way of keeping money. I put it in a bank, don't draw it, and I'm happy with if it gets me any interest, etc. And then we compare that interest income with the hassle of investing it in a financial instrument or with some other kind of investment. We weigh, not the hassle will probably become less, but not necessarily the risks, because investment is also related to our perception of the risk, saying how risky is this particular investment. And that will remain the same whichever way you settle it, But because you are able to settle it very quickly, if you invest, obviously your savings are going to deplete. But savings in way of liquid assets, liquid investments, that means which can be in cash very quickly, that has always been weighing or weighed against the savings, saying these are as good as saving. So there are shades of grey, but on the whole, the impact, to my mind, easier investment, depletion of savings, and the wealth probably does not change, because wealth is nothing but a stock of your income, stock of your earnings and others, and those don't really get affected whether you are saving or investing.
Very enlightening indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. AJ Dua, for speaking to us on Trending Tech and bringing your expertise with us on NewsX World, as always. Thank you very much. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of the Trending Tech. For more tech updates and innovations, stay tuned on NewsX World.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reforms, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve. And
Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Thailand launches airstrikes on Cambodian positions after a Thai soldier is killed, with Cambodia reporting 4 civilians have died and thousands fleeing the border areas. Both sides trade blame for the heaviest clashes since July's ceasefire, as Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar warns the violence could unravel regional stability. Ukraine's President Zelensky meets UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, France's Macron and Germany's Merz in London to review a new US-Ukraine peace plan drafted in Florida. Trump has said that Zelensky has not read the proposal yet, as Western unity strains, and Kyiv warns its survival depends on these negotiations. At least 7 people are injured after Russian drone strike in an apartment block in Ukraine's Sumy region, with 2 victims hospitalized. The border region faces near daily attacks as the war approaches its 4th year. Syrians celebrate the first anniversary of Bashar al-Assad's overthrow with events in Damascus, Umayyad Square, and military parades nationwide. Even as the country struggles to recover from years of war, celebrations come amid ongoing instability and a fractured landscape 1 year after Assad fled to Russia. Nigerian authorities secured the release of 100 abducted students from St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, with handover expected on Monday. The presidency confirms their freedom, but the status of another 165 students and staff remains unknown. President Trump's new global security roadmap omits any target of denuclearization. North Korea breaking with 2 decades of U.S. policy, the shift sparks speculation that Washington is positioning for a diplomatic breakthrough with Pyongyang in 2026. A South Korean woman is sentenced to 4 years in prison for extorting national team captain Son Heung-min by falsely claiming she was pregnant with his child. Prosecutors say she took 300 million won for her silence and then tried to demand another 70 million. Iran has said that a European-based dual national arrested during the 12-day war with Israel has been sent to trial on charges of espionage for the Zionist regime. Officials have not named the defendant, but allegedly he conducted intelligence cooperation with Israel while in Iran in June. Now we start this hour with Thailand Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has said that his country never wants to see violence after fresh clashes broke out with neighboring Cambodia, but noted that the government would not stand any violation of its sovereignty. Let's have a look at what the Thai Prime Minister has shared.
รัฐบาลขอยืนยันว่าประเทศไทยจะดำรงความมุ่งมั่นสูงสุดในการปกป้องอธิปไตยและบูรณภาพแห่งดินแดนของชาติตามหลักกฎหมายระหว่างประเทศและสิทธิในการป้องกันตนเองโดยชอบธรรมและในวันนี้ได้มีการประชุมสภาความมั่นคงแห่งชาติโดยมีมติยืนยันว่ารัฐบาลจะดำเนินการตามมติสภาความมั่นคงแห่งชาติก็คือจะมีการปฏิบัติการทางทหารในทุกกรณีตามเงื่อนไขของสถานการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นและให้มีการปฏิบัติการทางทหารในเรื่องอื่นๆที่มีความจำเป็นประเทศไทยไม่เคยต้องการเห็นความรุนแรงโดยยืนยันว่าประเทศไทยไม่เคยเป็นฝ่ายริเริ่มหรือรุกรานแต่อย่างใดแต่ประเทศไทยจะไม่ยอมให้มีการล่วงละเมิดอธิปไตยและจะดำเนินการอย่างมีเหตุมีผลรอบคอบยึดหลักสันติภาพความมั่นคงและมนุษยธรรมเป็นสำคัญ
Thailand claims that it has launched airstrikes into Cambodia as fighting broke out in multiple areas along their disputed border, after both countries accused the other of breaching a ceasefire brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump. According to the Thai Army spokesperson, at least 1 Thai soldier has been killed and 8 others wounded in the fresh clashes that has intensified at around 22 GMT. Meanwhile, Cambodia's ex-Prime Minister Hun Sen has accused Thailand of being the aggressor and trying to provoke Cambodia. He has also urged the Cambodian forces to exercise restraint. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this as escalations, as the situation escalates between Cambodia and Thailand, how can these 2 countries manage their border disputes, long disputed border disputes, to prevent escalation while maintaining their national sovereignty?
Indeed, both Thailand and Cambodia, maintaining status quo is interesting in this case because, of course, this is territorial issue. Both sides want to claim, but at the same time, these territories, indeed, because of the World Heritage, there's a possibility some income they can get, but that is income. Very limited incomes they are seeking, so that's why if they forge a big war, this is not a cost-effective way. They waste huge money. So that's why, indeed, in this case, maintaining a ceasefire is relatively easy compared with the other big war, big conflict, I think. But at the same time, they killed each other. This kind of emotional situation has already happened. And in this case, just give up is not the option for both sides. And in this case, a little interesting is there is a big military capability gap between two countries. Thailand has a huge sophisticated armed forces, especially they have the sophisticated air force. In case of Cambodia, Cambodia do not have the air force itself, and their anti-air weapon is also limited. So that's why if the air strike has happened from Thailand side, indeed this is one-side game. So that's why Thai can bomb the Cambodia. Cambodia cannot repel this air strike. So that's why if the Thailand has the will to stop this bombing, of course it is easy to achieve the ceasefire. In this case, Thailand has initiative, and so that's why now the Thailand says that there is no political will to continue the big battle. So that's why the ceasefire will happen, I think. Restart again. But because of the maintain a ceasefire is important thing, and emotional problem is still exists. So that's why sometimes sporadic fighting could happen. But ceasefire is maybe it is a long-term course they are working, I think.
Yes, and this year's last during last mediations efforts between these two countries, we didn't see much coming out of ASEAN nations. Do you think what role can external mediators such as the ASEAN nations play in enforcing ceasefire agreements? Even maybe Malaysia can play in between Thailand and Cambodia.
Malaysia has already set up the stage of the negotiation between two as a host country of the ASEAN this year. And but pressure from the President Trump is also the effective power to power for both sides to sit in the chair of the negotiation table. So that's why it has happened. So because of the combination of the ASEAN's involvement and the U.S. pressure, that's why it is maybe nearly the good enough condition for both sides to agree the ceasefire. But at the same time, if this condition will change by some other factor, of course there is a possibility they will fight again. And at least sporadic fighting could happen, not only now but also the future. So that's why there's a possibility the maintenance effort of the ceasefire is very important. And without this, some sporadic fighting could be a little bit escalated one between two countries. And for ASEAN, this is very important and serious issue because if the country cannot integrate their effort, ASEAN is meaningless. So that's why the value of the ASEAN rely on how to maintain peaceful situation or how to coordinate their effort. And that is needed. So that's why this issue is indeed a very important issue for ASEAN, I think.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for highlighting that. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our later discussion. Now moving forward to Europe, France is pushing back against calls to use frozen Russian assets held in its private banks to support a new reparations loan for Ukraine. According to the reports, Paris argues that private credit institutions operate under different contractual rules than Belgium's Euroclear, which holds most of Russia's sovereign assets. Reports say that French banks are refusing to take part in talks over transferring Russian private assets to Kyiv. They currently hold about $19.4 billion, the second largest amount in Europe. Belgium follows with roughly $7.6 billion in private accounts. Across Europe, around $227 billion in Russian sovereign assets remain frozen, with $200 billion held at Euroclear. The location of the remaining $27 billion has not been officially disclosed. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Shruti Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this once again, how aligned are European nations at this moment, and how does France's refusal to use these private Russian assets for Ukraine, are we seeing another disagreement even among the coalition of the willing?
Well, there is obviously going to be a larger dissent occurring on December 18th when these European Council will sit down and discuss whether they can take on the risk of taking on Russia as a giant against themselves. It's right now they want to play the David versus Goliath ideology in the Ukraine-Russia war, but taking on freezing an asset as part of sanctions, which is globally acceptable. Using those frozen assets to propel your enemy is something which is unethical, and EU needs the consent of each member to actually go forth with this plan. So this plan is twofold. One of them is that they say that we will use the Russian assets to pull for it, and the other one is that we will use our own funds. But to have the Russian assets, it has to be unanimous, and Belgium is already digging its heel in because it fears Russian repercussions because it has the largest repository of frozen accounts. And it is they are very worried that of the repercussions that are going to come through. What they want is for the security to be promised to them in the name of one, that the Russian sanctions, I think they end at around 2027 as of now, and they want the guarantees that EU is willing to provide for opening up those assets to go beyond 2027. Now, France, of course, the private entities cannot be pushed into taking on public or state level risks because they are not protected by the same laws as state banks. So in the case of France, they are having facing dissent or facing private money lenders are unable to secure their own resources against this kind of takeover by EU and its ideology. So in case of both France and Belgium, we are seeing that there is a larger pushback because there are no security guarantees and there are no military guarantees of ensuring that once such a step is taken, Russia and Kremlin is not going to come down crumbling on their plans. Putin on his side has already claimed that if you do this time, it is going to be a declaration of war, and Russia is not scared of taking on the entire EU all by itself. So there is a larger military conflict that has been put on this particular use of frozen assets and the way it has been proposed. So by default, I think by the 18th of December, you will find that there will not be a unanimous vote for using frozen Russian assets, and they will have to put in their own budgetary funds as a loan to Ukraine to do whatever they want to promise to do. Part of this loan is already going to reservice the loan issued in 2024. So basically, EU is funding its own loans and they're just like recycling it, and the loan doesn't ever end. And it all hinges on the fact that Russia may lose and will have to pay reparations. They do not even consider the fact that Russia might win, and then there will be no reparations, and then this money is going to be something very difficult to find in all the fog of war.
And why do you think, Shruti, why do you think they're not